Welcome back to the True Crime series. This week we're going to be taking a look at the Pembrokeshire murders. This was a peaceful rural community that had a dark shadow cast over it. And today we're going to be looking at John Cooper. So let's take a look at the background. John was born on September the 3rd, 1944. He ended up leaving school at age 15 and started to train to be a carpenter. However, the majority of his jobs ended up him working as a farmhand around Pembrokeshire. In his late teens and early 20s, he ended up getting arrested for assault, theft, and drunken disorderly. He ended up marrying Pat, who was someone that he knew since childhood, and they ended up having 2 children together, Teresa and Adrian. Adrian, who's also known as Andrew, ended up leaving when he was 15 years old, and he claims that his father was very violent and aggressive towards him. Now, there are some claims that he killed a pig with a hammer, and there's also claims that he decided to have fun shooting by shooting at some baby chicks in front of his children. I mean, these could be fabricated, but it sort of paints the picture of the sort of person that he was. It was almost like there was 2 sides of John. There was this side of John that would go to the pub, play darts, all his friends would pat him on the back, give him a handshake, see him as a really good guy, and then there was this other side of John that was very abusive towards his children. So John ended up winning £90,000 in a newspaper competition, which is sort of equivalent to around $500,000 today. So it was quite a lot of money. And although the money didn't supposedly change him, John did say how other people used to act a lot differently around him after the money. And none of this money went towards his family or his children. It all went on gambling, pubs, and also really bad business ventures. So eventually the money ended up drying up and he just decided to go back to theft and burglaries. So what happened and how was he caught? On the 22nd of December 1985, John ended up killing Richard and Helen Thomas in their own home. He ended up burning down the home in the hopes that it would cover his tracks after he shot them both. Police believe this was a robbery gone wrong, and John was questioned but never really found guilty or had any suspicion towards him. He casually mentioned to his family that there had been a fire and they were questioning people in the local area, and said it would just be easier if we all said that we were together watching TV that night. He claimed that it would be easier that way as the police wouldn't follow up and ask more questions and be annoying. But in reality, he was just covering his tracks. And on the 29th of June 1989, Peter and Gwenda Dixon were found dead on a coastal path. They had gone to Pembrokeshire for a walking and camping holiday. However, when they were walking the coastal route, they bumped into John Cooper. John ended up tying them up, robbing them, threatening them, and then shooting them both in the face. 2 days later, their son reported them missing as they hadn't returned home from their holiday, and the police eventually found them on the coastal path. It turns out Peter Dixon's card had been used at multiple ATMs as John had threatened the PIN code out of Peter before he died. The police struggled to find a motive with this kill because although John technically did rob them, he didn't rob them for a lot of money, so it didn't make sense of how violent the crime was comparison to how little money he gained. Witnesses were also able to describe the man who was using the cash points to withdraw the money, and a sketch was made of him. John Cooper ended up getting questioned about the murder as a pawn shop owner found that John had come in recently to give a wedding ring away and make money from it, and Peter Dixon's wedding ring was found missing. And John claimed it was his own wedding ring, so the police didn't really have anything else to follow up on. On the 6th of March 1996, 5 teenagers were walking the Pembrokeshire hillside, and they came across a man wearing a balaclava and a shotgun. First, he tried to rob them and ask for all their money, and then he ended up assaulting a 15-year-old girl and raping a 16-year-old girl. And the interesting thing is that none of these cases were found to be related. because they were all so different. There was a burglary gone wrong, there was a brutal murder, and then there was an assault on some teenagers. However, in 1998, Cooper was charged for over 30 burglaries. He was sentenced to 16 years in jail, and also when the police searched his house, they found items from all these burglaries. Now, police always had their suspicions about John Cooper, and they always believed that he was somehow related to some of these crimes that had taken place. But in 2006, a small team of officers carried out a cold case review. They ended up looking at all the evidence from the Dixon murder to the Thomas murder, and they looked through all the different materials and all the pieces of evidence that were found and started to send off pieces of the evidence to a crime lab to test for DNA. And eventually this DNA came back and showed that John Cooper was related to these crimes. Another interesting fact is John also went on the show Bullseye, which was a really popular show to do with darts back in the day, and the police had this suspicion of him as, from a way he was standing on the Bullseye show, looked exactly like the sketch that was made from the man taking money out of the ATMs. So the Bullseye show was also used to identify John, which was very interesting. And because of this, he's also known as the game show killer. So the police ended up interviewing him for 4 days, and the interviewers decided to go in with the idea that they would let him talk. They would let him feel in control of the interview in the hopes that he would slip up and spill something that maybe he shouldn't spill. They noticed he kept referring to a specific shotgun, and that sort of caught him out a little bit, because later on, a couple of days into the interview, they started questioning him about this shotgun, and he slowly felt like he wasn't in control of this interview process anymore. So in 2011, Cooper was jailed for his crimes. However, he did try to appeal this sentence, however, it was instantly rejected. So why might he have committed these crimes? Again, this is all speculation, this is all theory, this is all sort of my thoughts. So normally I like to look into the childhood of killers. However, I really struggled to find a lot of information on his childhood. The only thing I could find was that he left school at 15, which is kind of normal for those days. A lot of kids dropped out of school early if they weren't into academics. They would go into manual labour, which he did. But also in his late teens, he did start committing some crimes, and he even apparently assaulted a police officer back in the day. But I like to look deeper into the childhood to see if anything from his childhood made him become violent, because I do not believe that killers are innate. I believe that it's an environmental factor that causes killers to be killers, if that makes sense. However, obviously from a young age, he was shown to be violent. So his violence just kind of continued when he got older. His children also claimed that he was aggressive, loud and violent. He also apparently used to kill small animals, like shooting the chicks. But none of this really explains of how he ended up becoming a murderer. He was always aggressive and always violent, but why did he end up taking that next step to murder? It doesn't make sense. So there's multiple sort of theories of why this happened. It could be the fact that he did mention that he won £90,000 and that people changed around him. So maybe the fact that people were different around him because he had money had an effect on him. But I think that's sort of clutching at straws, really. I don't think there's a lot to that, but maybe the fact that he felt so hard done by. But again, it doesn't seem to make sense to me. I think the other thing is that with the Thomas's murder, when he used to burgle, he ended up going to houses where women were alone, and he would go in and burgle houses where there was just women. However, with the Thomas's, there was also her brother there. So maybe it was a robbery that went wrong, and maybe he panicked, maybe he ended up killing them, so he then panicked and burnt down the house. And then when he got away with it, maybe he felt this sort of joy, this thrill, this excitement, the fact that he got away with it. So maybe that drove him to kill again. And with the Dixon's murder, it doesn't make sense of how violent it was, at least to me. Maybe the fact that they had seen his face, maybe he didn't have a mask on, maybe they'd seen it, maybe that's why he decided to kill them. But the truth is, I don't know. It wasn't like he was constantly killing people, but maybe if he hadn't gone to jail for the 30 robberies, maybe he would have. And he definitely didn't feel any remorse, especially towards his children that he used to abuse. So why would he feel remorse for these murders? However, the truth is, we will never really know why John Cooper committed these murders. We can only speculate. So let me know your thoughts and your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, why not, it's free. You can always unsubscribe later. And hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye!